Hey guys, welcome to our weekly news show here on Backstage with Millionaires. I'm Caleb, your host, and it has been such an exciting week in India's startup ecosystem, specifically when it comes to tech. So we're going to be talking about the delay in shipping of Ola Electric's S1 and S1 Pro electric scooters, but also Bounce's plans to launch their own electric scooter in December. We're also going to be talking about Skyroot Aerospace testing their cryogenic rocket engine. We're going to be talking about Mobikwik deciding to delay their IPO after seeing what happened with Paytms. And we're also going to be talking about India's two newest startup unicorns, coming up right after this. All right, so first up in the news, we've got an unfortunate situation to talk about regarding Ola Electric. So as you guys probably remember back in September, there was a lot of hype surrounding the S1 and S1 Pro electric scooters. And they managed to sell 1,100 crore rupees of these scooters in just 2 days. That was a record-breaking number. And they said that they'd start shipping them out in October. But now it's the end of November, and if you live in one of India's metros, you've probably noticed that we're not seeing any S1s or S1 Pros on the roads of these cities, and that's because they still haven't started shipping. They've given a date now of December 15th, which is when they're gonna start shipping, and the reason for the delay, according to the startup, is that there's a shortage of chipsets and electronic components. Now, obviously, this is really disappointing for anybody who's actually planning to drive an S1 or an S1 Pro around at the end of October and into November, but Ola Electric has said that they're taking this opportunity now to actually fine-tune some of the issues that were present in these scooters at that point of time, in the middle of October. And if they had actually started shipping the scooters at that time, probably the end consumers would have received buggy scooters. Specifically, there's some software issues, there's also some overheating problems with these scooters, and a laggy throttle that they're all fine-tuning now. They're fixing those things up so that when the scooters actually ship to consumers, they're gonna be perfectly ready to go from day one. Now, if you just can't wait to get your hands on an S1 or an S1 Pro, Ola Electric is actually setting up testing centers in cities across India. Currently, there are 9 of these centers across the country, but they're planning to increase that number to 1,000 testing centers by December 15th. I don't know how they're going to accomplish that. That seems like a very lofty goal, and I'm really not sure what form these testing centers are actually going to take, whether it's going to be a physical building or if it's just going to be a tent with like maybe one scooter that you can test out. But hopefully by December 15th, more specifically, you're gonna be able to go, if you live in a tier 1 or tier 2 or maybe even a tier 3 city in India, you're gonna be able to go and actually test an S1 or an S1 Pro out. So that's something to look forward to if you're excited about these scooters. All right, next up in the news, but continuing to talk about electric scooters now, dockless scooter rental startup Bounce is going to be launching their own electric scooter called the Bounce Infinity on December 2nd. Now, as we already covered in a previous news video, Bounce had acquired 22 Motors, and 22 Motors has a manufacturing facility in Bhiwadi, Rajasthan. Now, at this manufacturing facility, 22 Motors was making Flow electric scooters, and so it looks like the Bounce Infinity is probably just going to end up being a rebranded version of the Flow electric scooter, but with one interesting key difference. Batteries are going to be optional. So you can buy the scooter with the battery, but of course, batteries for electric vehicles end up increasing the price considerably. A bulk of the price of any electric vehicle is going to be the battery itself. And so Bounce is going to be offering these scooters without batteries as well. Now, obviously you can't drive an electric vehicle without a battery. So what they're going to be doing is setting up battery swapping infrastructure so that instead of buying a battery outright, you can rent batteries from the company and swap them out as you go. This is obviously going to make the Bounce Infinity more accessible to everyday people who perhaps wouldn't be able to afford to buy normally the scooter plus the battery outright. And this is one of the barriers to entry right now when it comes to electric vehicles. They are more expensive than their IC engine counterparts. And so people end up buying petrol and diesel vehicles instead of buying EVs. Although Nitin Gadkari has said that in the next 2 years, we're going to see that equilibrium where EVs are going to be on par in terms of the pricing with IC engine vehicles. I'm not sure if that means that EVs are going to become less expensive or if it means that IC engine vehicles are going to become more expensive. That remains to be seen. But I think that this approach that Bounce is taking will only really succeed if they're able to make this battery swapping infrastructure widespread. If it's going to be everywhere, it's going to be ubiquitous, then of course people are going to adopt it. But if it's not, it's just going to be an inconvenience. It's going to be a headache. You're going to have to plan plan your day around where these battery swapping stations are, and that's going to cause this idea to really flounder and probably end up being dead in the water. So if this idea sounds interesting to you, if you're looking to buy a Bounce Infinity, then from December 2nd, you can pre-book one of these scooters for 499 rupees. All right, next up, this video is sponsored by Skillshare, an online learning community where you can find thousands of classes taught by your favorite creators, entrepreneurs, and teachers. Take, for example, this class, which I've personally learned a lot from. It was created by Albert Wenger, a 5-time startup founder. And basically, what you'll learn here is how to start a startup, from idea to innovation. And this is something that we get asked a lot about at Backstage with Millionaires. How do I actually start up? Well, this class would be a great place for you to learn that. You'll discover how to generate business ideas, how to find a co-founder, how to validate whether your startup idea is a good one or not, how to build an MVP, and then once you're done all of that, how to actually figure out whether or not it's working. And just generally speaking, Skillshare is a great place to learn stuff. Because as a startup founder, you kind of need to be a jack of all trades. Public speaking, sales, marketing, leadership, product design. You can head over to Skillshare to learn all of these things and more. Or maybe you want to learn from your favorite creators and entrepreneurs like Marcus Brownlee, Thomas Frank, Lily Singh, or Guy Kawasaki. The possibilities are endless, and you can gain access to Skillshare's entire library of classes for less than 2,000 rupees per year. That's 166 rupees per month, which is less than what most of us spend on a single breakfast. But in case you want to try Skillshare out before paying, they're actually offering the first 1,000 Backstage with Millionaires viewers who click on the link in the description down below a 1-month free trial to Skillshare. So head over to Skillshare and start learning today. All right, next up in the news, we have a huge win for Indian space tech. Skyroot Aerospace has become the first Indian space tech startup to successfully test a fully cryogenic 3D printed rocket engine called the Dhawan-1 for their Vikram 2 rockets. As you guys probably remember, back in 2020, Skyroot Aerospace was also the first Indian space tech startup to test a rocket engine in general. This was a 3D printed rocket engine called the Raman for their Vikram 1 rocket, and so now they've done it again. They're breaking records pretty much every single year now. Now, do keep in mind here that these are upper stage rocket engines. So they're not the rocket engines that get the rocket from Earth to space, but once the rocket is in space, these are the rocket engines that get the satellite into orbit. But this is still a huge step forward. It's incredible how much progress has already been made. India's space tech industry was just recently opened up to private players, and they're already taking such huge steps. So congratulations to Skyroot Aerospace for this progress. And according to the CEO and one of the co-founders of Skyroot Aerospace, Pawan Kumar Chandana, this is a completely made in India cryogenic engine developed using 3D printing with a super alloy, reducing manufacturing time by more than 95%. This test makes us one of the very few companies in the world to have successfully demonstrated this technology. All right, next up in the news, it looks like Mobikwik is putting their plans to go public on hold. So they filed for their IPO back in July of this year. They were planning to raise 1,900 crore rupees as early as this month, November. But after seeing what happened with Paytm's IPO, where its investors lost about 30% of their wealth, Mobikwik has decided that they're going to delay their plans to go public indefinitely. Now, obviously part of this decision to delay is based on the fact that public sentiment towards Indian fintech startups going public is at an all-time low, but it looks like Mobikwik is also having a hard time convincing qualified institutional buyers that they're worth what they say they're worth. And their valuation has actually dropped by between 20 and 40%, according to Economic Times. So even though the Securities and Exchange Board of India has approved this IPO, I think it's unlikely that Mobikwik is going to go public this year. Probably this IPO will be happening in 2022 if it happens at all. All right, moving on to some funding news now. Property buying and rental platform NoBroker has raised $210 million in a funding round led by General Atlantic, Tiger Global, and more strategic ventures at a $1.01 billion valuation, which is a 2.5x jump from their previous valuation last year of $400 million. And of course, this makes them a startup unicorn and the first Indian prop tech startup unicorn ever. So NoBroker currently has 16 million customers across across 6 Indian cities. And in a nutshell, what this platform allows you to do is buy, sell, and rent apartments, houses, villas, other kinds of properties without the need of brokers, who typically charge exorbitant brokerage fees. And unfortunately, in this space, there's a lot of unprofessional behavior, a lot of shady behavior. Little story time here: when I was living in Delhi, I found an apartment through a broker, but he told me that the landlord didn't really want to have to deal with the tenant. He was living in a different city and he just wanted to be hands-off. The broker also told me that there was no rental agreement. That wasn't something that the landlord wanted to give. And I didn't know how things worked in India at the time. I just moved to India. And so I said, okay, I guess no rental agreement, that's fine. Maybe that's how things work here. And the broker told me that every month, just give your rent to me and I'll pass it on to the landlord. Of course, the broker was just putting the rent in his pocket, and then he was going to the landlord and saying, sorry, I haven't been able to find a tenant to fill this apartment yet. And so for a couple of months, I was just living in this apartment without even paying money directly to the landlord. I was giving it to the broker. Eventually, the landlord found out and there was this big situation. The landlord wanted to kick me out of the apartment. Luckily, we were able to cut a deal, but it was a really messy situation that could have been avoided with NoBroker. So NoBroker is going to be using these funds to expand their presence from 6 cities to 50 cities in the next 2 to 3 years. All right, next up in the funding news, online used car marketplace Spinny has raised $285 million in a funding round led by Tiger Global and Abu Dhabi Growth Fund at a $1.75 billion valuation, which is a more than 2x jump from their valuation 4 months ago of $700 million. And of course, this makes them India's 37th startup unicorn of 2021 and the 4th Indian startup unicorn in the used car marketplace segment. So Spinny is currently selling 3,000 cars a month, which is 3x what they were selling in January, and they've actually grown 4x to reach an annualized revenue run rate of $300 million. They're going to be using these funds to expand from 15 cities to 25 cities and also to expand their technological capabilities. All right, next up in the funding news, as you can tell, I'm filming this at a later date because this is breaking news right now. It happened just a couple of hours ago. Online investment platform Upstox has become India's 38th startup unicorn of 2021. If you don't count CureFit, where that deal has not yet been finalized, and if you don't count 5-Star Business Finance, which is a very old company and not really a startup. But anyways, Upstox has raised $25 million in a funding round led by Tiger Global at an estimated $3.4 billion, according to NTracker. And this is actually part of a larger funding round, so that valuation may go up. So there are currently 6 million investors using Upstox to invest in things like stocks, mutual funds, and IPOs, but the startup is planning to increase that number to 10 million by the end of this financial year. And as you guys probably know, Upstox is in competition with startups like Zerota and Grow. All right, next up in the funding news, Dream Sports, which is the parent company of fantasy gaming unicorn Dream 11, has raised $840 million in a funding round led by Falcon Edge Capital, DST Global, D1 Capital, Redbird Capital, and Tiger Global at an $8 billion valuation, which is up from their previous valuation of $5 billion. So Dream 11 is, of course, the market leader in the fantasy gaming space. They have 110 million users on their platform, but now Dream Sports wants to start diversifying. They've set up a $250 million fund through Dream Capital, and they've already invested in 10 startups in the sports and fitness spaces. And according to Harsh Jain, one of the co-founders of Dream Sports, we have one good core business, which has market leadership in its area. Now, we want to go and build the YouTube, Gmail, and Google Maps of sports. We want to build an Alphabet-like entity, not just Google search. All right, that is all the startup news that I have for you guys this week. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something from it. And if you did, it would mean a lot to us if you could hit the like button, share this video with a friend or two, maybe share it on social media if you're using Twitter or Reddit or even on WhatsApp. And also, if you haven't already subscribed, now would be a great time to do so. We post new videos every single week about Indian startups, entrepreneurs, and the latest news. Also, I wanted to say a big thanks to all of our Backstage with Millionaires members, our unicorns, our decacorns, and our hectacorns. Also, big thanks to everybody who's been sending super thanks our way in the comments. And also, I wanted to say a big thanks to this week's sponsor, Skillshare. And just a reminder, guys, for the first 1,000 BWM viewers who click on the link in the description down below, you'll get your first month of Skillshare for free. So head over to Skillshare and start learning today. All right, thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Backstage with Millionaires, and I will see you in the next one.